The game's going to be at 1 o'clock on Sunday. The Dolphins' first home game of the season. It's your first away game, right? You guys played back-to-back home games. So,
Yep.
new experience for both teams, very different. Dolphins went on the road to Los Angeles, then went to Boston. We're kind of doing almost a four corners challenge of the country. It's just week 3. Whereas you guys, you've been comfortable at home so far. What was, I don't know off the top of my head, how successful were you guys on the road last year compared to at home?
Last year we won one road game. It was in London against the Jags.
Oh wow! So you didn't even win, technically speaking, a road game in America.
Yeah, it was horrible. This team could not win on the road to save their life. They had a couple of opportunities. I mean, we almost beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, but a really bad offensive pass interference call on Cortland Sutton, which would have extended Denver's drive and basically allowed them to run the clock out. That caused us to lose that game. It was unfortunate, but last year we could not win on the road. Sean Payton's teams, I believe, historically have done well on the road. They they're really good at limiting pre-snap penalties with dealing with the crowd noise and stuff like that. That was a big issue for us last year. We were 29th in the NFL in pre-snap penalties last year, and a lot of them, I went back and looked, they came on the road. We did not do well at all handling crowd noise. So that's something I'm really going to be interested to see how well we do going into this game, just that aspect of it. Our first road game, I feel like that's going to be the big test.
Yeah, and well, you say big test, and I don't mean to be insulting of your team, but Donovan, definitely when we saw the schedule, when you saw looking at the Chargers, and then you got the Patriots, and then after this game you have the Bills. Just being honest, we did look at this game as okay. This is a little bit of a little safety bump in between what is otherwise a pretty difficult start to the season. We're 2-0, they're 0-2. Donovan, do you still kind of feel that is the case going into this game?
Yeah, I don't get me wrong, they looked a lot better early than I thought they would. So there's that. However, I'm just from what I've seen from this offense, I don't think there's anybody that can contain us at all. Like especially, with the faults that the Denver's defense has, especially now with, Justin Simmons, who has the last 2 times we played, this man has terrorized us. With like game-ending interceptions. So with him possibly being out this weekend, I am extremely excited for what we can do, especially since now we have a much better offense than we have had in previous years, and I don't get to be terrorized by Justin Simmons again. So there's the hoping. But yeah, I definitely we can even if they're able to tear up our defense, whatever, we're gonna just come back out and our offense is gonna murder them.
That is definitely the ideal scenario. However, there is definitely still a chance that the Broncos hang into this game, and there's still definitely a possibility that the Broncos end up coming away with a victory. So, in your mind, Gage, what has to go right? What is the ideal game script for the Broncos to walk away from Miami up 1-2?
Well, I think I already alluded to it. Sustain long drives, get the ground game going. If we can go on 6, 7, 8 minute drives, that's going to be a key factor for us. And then we have to be able to be a better red zone offense, especially in that second half, man. It feels like we're a great first half team. We're a terrible second half team, it feels like, over the past couple of weeks. So if we can sustain the brand of football that we've been able to have in the first half for really all 4 quarters, then I feel like we're going to be in good shape. It's going to, again, be all about winning in the trenches. That's going to be another big one. I mean, obviously, if we can get a couple of sacks on Tua and make Tua uncomfortable and deliver some pressure up the middle, this would be a good game for Zach Allen to finally step up. So that's going to be a big one. Miami's also going to want to go on some long sustained drives to try to keep Denver's offense off the field and try to expose our weakness, which is our defense. And last week, Eric Bieniemy, Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, and the Commanders really exposed a big hole in our run game, in our run defense. So that's going to be a big thing that I feel like Miami's going to want to take advantage of with Raheem Mostert, Salvon Ahmed, and Devon Achane. So that's going to be something that if we can contain those guys, but at the end of the day, we all know who the biggest difference maker for Miami on the offensive side of the ball is, and that's number 10, man. This dude has given Denver so many headaches over the years that we played him in Kansas City. We have had virtually no answers for Tyreek Hill. Vance Joseph going against somebody like that, I'm really concerned, especially with someone like Mike McDaniel scheming him open in so many creative ways. Oh, man. And then an underrated element, I feel like, of this, Denver's going to have to handle going into Miami where it's going to be hot, it's going to be humid. The weather is just going to be disgusting for a team coming from Colorado right now. So that's a big home field advantage for the Dolphins. I feel a lot better, honestly, if the game were here in Denver than I do us having to travel down to Miami this time of year.
Yeah, it's not a fun environment, even from Dolphins fans having to deal with the home atmosphere, the home heat. Because yes, it is a little bit of a home field advantage, but I mean, even just sitting there in the stands, like that heat can get absolutely miserable, and especially if the other team is able to run the ball very well, which we saw last week. You guys weren't able to do well against Brian Robinson, and conversely, the Dolphins did a really good job with getting the ball to Raheem Mostert and Donovan. That's something that we talked about a couple times throughout the week leading up to the Patriots game, is be able to sustain drives, be able to hand the ball up to Raheem Mostert to get A-Chain maybe involved a little bit. A-Chain is going to have to be more involved, assuming that Savon Ahmed isn't going to be playing. So do you have a strong belief, Donovan, that Raheem Mostert can replicate that performance from last week this Sunday?
I do have a feeling that he can, exceed what he did last week. I do think that, the Patriots now, they did play, a lot of 3 high safety, and they didn't really load the box as much. But with how Denver's run defense was when they knew Washington was actually going to run the ball, and given I do think Brian Robinson is a better running back than Mostert, but I do think Mostert has that speed and the ability to go and just, get the extra yards when he does with his size. And then another player, you mentioned him, A-Chain, with Ahmed possibly being out. He hasn't practiced all week so far. A-Chain is going to get a lot of playing time. And I remember I was saying, like, throughout the game, we were watching it almost together. And I was like, they were using Ahmed, like, put him in the slot, then rotate him around. And they lined him up everywhere on the field. They lined up Ezukama everywhere on the field, kind of like what they did with Tyreek as well. And A-Chain was drafted because he has the ability to do that, because he has the catch ability, he has the speed, he has the shiftiness, and he's fully healed from his shoulder now. He's not on the injury report. I anticipate him having a much bigger role in this game than a lot of people think. And, especially, you don't want to give too many carries to Mostert with his injury history and his age. You want to make sure that he's going to be able to kind of stay fresh throughout the season. You want to kind of do it almost like a 50-50 split.
I really wanted Denver to draft A-Chain.
He's definitely a nice little utility weapon, and I might as go far to say that, and what I was going to ask you next is he could be the X factor for the Dolphins on Sunday with Tyreek Hill going to be out there without Jalen Waddle, most likely. Raheem Mostert, is he able to replicate that performance in back-to-back weeks? There is a strong unknown when it comes to Devon A-Chain, what he's going to be. Don has been more of a fan of A-Chain than I have been. I definitely like a bigger athlete, somebody who in one of their first games isn't going to nearly break their shoulder because somebody landed on top of them. Just the reality of the situation. But he clearly is a very talented. That is the reality of the situation. He
got body slammed like he was in WrestleMania.
This is the NFL. It happens. I mean, that's something that happens on a regular basis, and especially somebody who's running. You're running at 350-pound men. It is something you have to worry about. But he is going to have an increased role, and I'm very interested to see if he can take what Savon Ahmed has done. And we've been very complimentary of Savon Ahmed over the last few days about how he played against New England. He just seems so decisive. He looked sharp. His ability to cut was much better than we've seen in previous years. So I might go far to say he is the X factor for the Dolphins. We'll see what ends up his role actually ends up being on Sunday. Gage, if you had to choose one player for the Broncos that you think is the X factor for this game, who would it be?
Probably Jerry Jeudy, if I'm going to be honest, man. He really kind of floundered last week. I mean, he was limited because of his hamstring injury. This is going to be a game where we need Jerry Jeudy to have a big day. 7 catches for over 100 yards would be ideal, but I would gladly take, 5 catches for 54 yards if those catches came in key clutch moments, but we just need Jerry Jeudy to make an impact in this game for sure. So I'd say he's the biggest X factor for us right now.
And what about defensively? What do you think defensively your biggest X factor is going to be?
Zach Allen.
Zach
Because
Allen?
he's really disappointed these last couple of weeks, and I feel like if there's a weakness on Miami's offensive line right now, it's probably interior. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is going to be one where Zach Allen is going to need to step up.
It depends on how healthy the offensive line is. If Teron Armstead plays, then
Yeah.
the weak point is definitely in the middle. I'm not really sure where the weak point is right now because
Yeah,
they've
that's what
all
I was like,
they've
how's
they've
that,
all
though?
they've all kind of stepped up. On paper, yes, the weak point is because you have a center that might snap the ball over to his head every other play. Left guard Isaiah Wynns played pretty well, and Robert Hunt's kind of returned to the form that we saw 2 years ago. Really struggled last year, and on the tackles, Kendall Lamb has stepped up and played some of his best football in his career. Same thing with Austin Jackson. I mean, Tua's only been sacked one time in the first 2 games so far this season. So the offensive line is definitely massively improved. So you're going to need to find somebody on that defensive line to bust forward and do something that the Chargers and the Patriots have not been able to do.
Yep. I feel like since you guys are starting Kendall Lamb at left tackle, I'm going to also throw in our edge rushers, Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, Randy Gregory. We're going to need one of those guys, because, I mean, Kendall Lamb's a guy I know has historically gotten beat with speed rush edge rushers. So that's somebody who fits the Nick Benito mold. So I really would like to see Nick Benito be matched up against Kendall Lamb.
Yeah, Kendall Lamb actually has been our highest rate offensive lineman, ironically, because he is our backup offensive tackle. But that's kind of funny. Jacob, who do you think is going to be the X factor for the Dolphins defensively and offensively?
Well, mine depends on if the person who's supposed to start in his position does start. I'm going to go with Andrew Van Ginkel to see if he can have a very similar game to what we saw last week against the Patriots. I mean, he was just a wrecking machine, had a sack. If he was there a split second sooner, could have had maybe a strip sack fumble, ended up being an incomplete pass. And he just performed excellently in place of Jalen Phillips. We all kind of assumed it was going to be Emmanuel Ogbah if Jalen Phillips was unable to go. That injury happened after we recorded the preview last week, so we didn't actually get to talk about the Jalen Phillips injury. And Andrew Van Ginkel just stepped up there, and you couldn't really tell the difference between what him and Phillips are able to do. Looked very athletic. He did great to get to the quarterback. Was just given their right tackle work all game long. And I see you smirking there because I know he's been one of your guys, kind of similar to how you've defended Igbenogany last few weeks, how you've defended A-Chain. So I know that makes you happy to hear that I think Andrew Van Ginkel can be that guy to replicate his performance on the defense.
I am very happy. So I'm going to go ahead and I agree with you there, but I'm going to go ahead and throw out another name, and that's going to be Cam Smith, our second round rookie corner. Arguably, a lot of people were saying that he's may have been one of the top corners in the draft. We haven't seen him play, and I think a lot of that is mainly because Vic Fangio doesn't trust young guys. I'm sure Gage can attest. Gage can attest to that. But we saw Eli Apple struggle last week, and today Vic Fangio actually commented that, yeah, he had a rough game, but he made some good key plays, but everything is going to be evaluated, meaning Cam Smith has had a lot more reps at corner this week. So there's a good possibility he can either split time or maybe even start opposite of Xavier Howard this week. And I've been clamoring for this for the entire season so far. I just very much hate Eli Apple.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the mindset. I trust whatever the coaching staff says, whatever they're doing. I think we have the right guys at those positions, especially head coach, defensive coordinator. I'm not sure if there's a better head coach, defensive coordinator, especially when you have an offensive-minded head coach. I'm not sure if there's a better combination than what we have with Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio. So I lean towards, hey, these guys clearly know what they're doing, so let them go. But even Vic Fangio said, maybe we should think some things out, and anything's on the table, or however exactly worded it is. So maybe that ends up being the case. I've actually meant to ask you earlier, speaking of coaching staff, this is, like I said, the first 2 games under the new regime. And what's your thoughts been so far on how Sean Payton has been as the Broncos head coach?
Sean Payton, I feel like, has done really, really well with play calling. That's one thing. I mean, I've complained a little bit about him abandoning the run in the second half, but a part of that is due to defensive adjustments. But the play calling, I feel like, has been fantastic. He's schemed guys open. It's just been so refreshing compared to last year's offensive play calling, which was just a jumbled crap show, basically trying to jumble everything Russ wanted to do with everything Hackett wanted to do. This offense has a clear structure with Sean Payton. And as far as building, the culture and the team dynamic that he wants to build, that's going to take time. He's going to want to get his own guys in here. This is going to be a multi-year rebuild project with Sean Payton, I feel like, but the first steps of it have shown a lot of optimism. So I'm really excited that this team actually has a general direction, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I feel like I'm watching the Broncos offense from last year, just with the lack of structure, trying to implement too many things, doing some of the Vic Fangio coverage schemes combined with Vance Joseph's defensive fronts and some stuff that like other guys want to do. It's just so frustrating watching this defensive scheme because it feels like it has no direction, no structure. We've got pre-snap penalties galore on the defensive side of the ball, offsides. We lead the league in personal fouls on the defensive side of the ball, I believe. So it's just been sloppy, undisciplined, and very disappointing considering what we expected this defense to be this year here in Broncos country. But I mean, I feel like the Broncos at least got the head coach hire right, and that's the first big step.
Yeah, I like that answer. I like that answer. Jake, so we talked about Sean Payton, talked about Mike McDaniel. What do you think, this matchup, you have one that kind of like an inexperienced head coach, second year in the league. Then you have Sean Payton, who's done it all, won a Super Bowl. And then you have Tua, who is currently 9-0 against Super Bowl winning coaches.
Yeah, and Sean Payton was one of those guys that was pretty vocal, especially last year. He said that Teddy Bridgewater was going to take Tua's spot. And it's interesting that it says that because one of the comparisons of Tua, the biggest comparison of Tua, is Drew Brees, somebody that Sean Payton had the luxury of coaching for such a long time, got a Super Bowl, had some playoff runs, and had a lot of success with. So it was very interesting to see that he had that. But yeah, Tua just I think it's a little overrated when you say somebody's a winner, especially with a game that you have 53 men on the active roster. But Tua just doesn't lose games. I mean, I don't think he's ever had a losing season in his career, going all the way back to probably even like middle school. Obviously had all that success with Alabama and has had a rocky few years with the Dolphins. But during that time, he has won a lot of games, even if it was during the Brian Flores era where that defense was carrying along most of the way, and that's what got a lot of the praise. And now it's shifted over to the offensive side. Now the defense is trying to catch up. He just keeps finding a way to win, and the team keeps finding a way to win. And Mike McDaniel, just the jump that I've seen in him, and we talked about this in the post-game stream last week against the Patriots, was that I've seen such growth in McDaniel, his play calling, his situational awareness. We've seen a cleanup in offensive penalties. We saw a lot of false starts. We saw a lot of holding calls, especially as the year went on last year. And part of that was, who's at quarterback. Like, God knows any particular game last year who the quarterback was going to be. We could end up starting Tua, and next thing you know,
season, baby.
Oh, please, dear God, don't say that name ever again. He sucks. I cannot stand Skylar Thompson, and I've preached from the mountaintops. I think he's not good at football.
He feels about Skylar Thompson what I feel about Keon Crossen and Eli Apple. Eli Apple's my new Keon Crossen.
I mean, he's just not good. That's not.
Is Eli Apple your new Eric Rowe?
Oh no, Eli Apple's our new Eli Apple. Like he's just him. You can't really compare anything to that.
But that's one thing I wanted to bring up with Eli Apple, man. Pay attention for Sean Payton to maybe scheme up Marvin Mims on Eli Apple in hopes of getting a big play.
I mean, you could put anybody over there in one way or another. I mean, because he was guarding Devontae Parker, which is very different from Mims. But Devontae Parker, who is, I think he was like statistically at one point when he was in Dolphins uniform, the literal worst wide receiver in the NFL at getting separation, and yet it felt like every single play Devontae Parker had separation against Eli Apple. So it was just mind-boggling how a receiver who cannot get open was open every single play. So now, what I was talking about before about trusting the defense and trusting the coaches, like, okay, now I think we need to make some changes. We have some actual football coming up here soon, so we're going to start to get towards the end here a little bit, and we always end up these previews with giving our predictions on how the game is going to go. Gage, as you are the guest on the channel, give us your thoughts on how the game is going to go. Give us a score prediction at the end. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think this is going to be a game where Denver gets some more things to go right for them on the offensive side of the ball. I think Sean Payton's going to really predicate cleaning up some of the communication errors that Denver had last week. We had to burn all 3 of our timeouts before the 5-minute mark in the first or in the second quarter. That was a big issue because of some long-winded play calls were taking too long to get from Sean's mouth to Russ's headset to the huddle, and then get up to the line, do your dummy cadence, identify the mic, do all your protection checks, all that stuff. So just cleaning up that operation is going to be predicated in this one. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see a little bit more of an up-tempo offense hurrying to the line of scrimmage from Denver, but then taking the play clock all the way down at the line of scrimmage and then snapping the ball, if that makes any sense. Kind of like the way Peyton Manning would operate his no huddle offense, but still be able to control the clock and manipulate the time of possession and all that stuff. So that's something that I could very much see. Defensively, man, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried that Tyreek Hill's going to get at least 2 big plays on our defense. I feel like our run defense is going to struggle against Raheem Mostert and potentially Devon Achane, as well as Salvon Ahmed if he does play. Score, I think Denver's offense is going to get some things together. They're going to have some big plays. They're going to have some big deep balls. But I think I'm going to go Miami 35-24.
Wow, going against your own team, that is something you'll never find over here on Miami Dolphins today. I don't care. Call us biased, call us delusional sometimes. I also, like we were talking about beforehand, I also run an FAU channel, and back-to-back weeks I've said that FAU is going to win. Donovan, don't bring up the fact that 3 weeks ago I said we can beat Clemson. Obviously, I know that was ridiculous. I get it. But Donovan, how do you think the game's going to go on Sunday?
So I kind of agree with Gage that I think their offense is going to get something going a little bit. I do think that we end up playing Cam Smith at one point in the game or another, whether Eli Apple gets burned and Vic Fangio just says, screw it, rookie, get in there. Or, they just leave Eli Apple in to get absolutely smoked. But I do think that they're going to score some points. I don't think it's going to be as low scoring as it was in the Patriots game. Offensively, even without Waddle, I'm extremely confident in this offense against that defense, particularly because they don't really have a second corner. The Patriots have one of the better secondaries in the entire league, and that's how they were able to kind of slow us down. However, now we go up against a defense that has one good player in their secondary. So I do think it's going to be
2 if they're healthy.
2 if they're healthy, but Justin Simmons probably not going to play. Yeah. Hopefully. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say it's going to be Dolphins 38, Broncos 28.
Okay. I definitely think this game is going to be a higher scoring affair than it was last week for the Dolphins. We had a high scoring game week 1 against the Chargers, and we knew going to that game against Bill Belichick and that Patriots defense that it was not going to be quite at all the same. This week, I think it is going to be different as both teams, you look at the circumstances for both teams. You look at the Broncos, it's almost a desperation game for the Broncos. Now, they do have 2 winnable games. I did misspoke earlier when I said that's going to be a rough stretch of games. That rough stretch of games starts after the Jets game. They have the Bears and the Jets, and then you got the Chiefs at Kansas City. You have the Packers. You have the Chiefs again 2 out of 3 weeks. You have the Bills. You have the Vikings. You have the Browns. So it's a really rough stretch there. And you guys definitely have to win each of your next 2 games if you have hope of making the playoffs. But you definitely don't want to start 0-3. I don't know what the statistics are on teams that start 0-3 that end up making the playoffs, but I imagine it's not that good. So I feel like there's definitely going to be a lot of desperation with the Broncos to just give it everything they've got. And Sean Payton, established head coach, he's going to be prepared. You're not getting the same defensive preparedness, with Vance Joseph. I wasn't even a big fan of Vance Joseph when he was the defensive coordinator over here. I was kind of surprised he got a head coaching job. So I don't really trust him on defense, especially when you do have arguably your second best player on defense who's likely going to be missing the game. So I think the Dolphins will have a better opportunity this week to put up a lot of points. 35, I guess, is the number. I'm going to stick with 35 also, and I'm going to say 35-21. The Dolphins get the victory over the Broncos. Clean sweep. Was kind of expecting you to pick the Broncos just because, it's fun being fans and trying to be a little unrealistic. Like, we have to play the Chiefs later this year, and I'm going to say that we're probably going to win by 40. Like, that's just, like, it's just, my mentality with it is that, hey, be a fan, be as wild and go out there as you can. But I definitely understand being a little more pessimistic with what you've seen from the team so far.